Can you hear me? Hello.
There's Josh Horowitz, ladies and gentlemen.
There, more importantly, is Mr. Tom Hanks. Look at this. We have matching microphones, sir. It's like they're gonna go on a date later.
Oh man,
it's kismet. It's meant to be. Once you have the matching equipment, that does half the job.
That means Josh and Tom are in love.
They're gonna be talking. All right, we're going to dive in.
Hit it.
Here we go. Very appropriate to Pinocchio. I have this is like having Abraham Lincoln and the Hall of Presidents come to life. This is like having Mount Rushmore start talking to me.
Wow.
It's Tom Hanks on my little podcast.
Don't you mean either Chip or Dale, and the guys inside the costumes there?
You're both of them combined.
Around? Yeah. You got me. There you have it. What do you need to know? Great moments with Mr. Lincoln. Let me blow by some of my Walt. Now, as you know, I'm authority. I mean, I can speak with authority. I'm not an authority, but I can speak with authority.
You played the man.
All things Disney because I played Walt Disney, and I learned an awful lot. And great moments with Mr. Lincoln, which was put together for the 1964 Flushing Meadows World's Fair. Lit a bonfire. I mean, everybody loved it, along with Hey, the GE Carousel of Progress. And at the last minute, literally at the last minute, It's a Small World, in which the I'm going to say Richard brothers. Quick staff. Do I have the right name?
The Sherman Brothers.
The Sherman Brothers, yes, Richard Sherman and his brother. They were essentially told on a minute's notice that they were going to be writing the theme to a new attraction sponsored by the Bank of America, by the way, called It's a Small World. And as they were walking from the announcement, in which Disney sort of impromptu said, and there will be a third attraction at the World's Fair, and it's going to be called It's a Small World, and it'll be brought to you by my friends at Bank of America. And the Sherman Brothers looked at each other and said, we're writing that song. And as they were walking from the meeting, they said, how are we going to write this song? I mean, what do we say? Oh, it's a small world. They said, well, it is a small world after all. And there you go. And let's sing 1, 2, 3. Whitney, Sarah,
we don't have the rights, Tom. We can't. We're going to get sued.
That is a problem. That's right.
We can do 2 notes.
Problem.
This is
now,
the gift.
If you go on, give me a couple more Disney minutes here.
Yeah, please.
Because
they've done a lot for you. You've done a lot for them. You might as well.
If you parse out your voyage on Is a Small World, you might notice that it has a slightly, it's since become sacrosanct. It's gorgeous. It's classic. Everybody loves it. But it has a cobbled together feel to it. I mean, you can see the cables on the ground and not the most lifelike of characters. And some of them really only do one thing. Their head spins around or their eyebrows go up and down or something like that. And here's one little tidbit is the flotation devices, the trough and the boats that slowly go through It's a Small World, same technology as it's Pirates of the Caribbean. You're in a boat that goes, flows with water, have had to take into account the growing weight gain of your average American. So they're not as, I guess they have more flotation on them than you do because quite frankly, people eat a lot of food more. So there you go.
This sums up the state of the world.
Check it out next time you're there.
This is the gift and the curse of talking to Tom Hanks is I can name any subject and you can pontificate beautifully for 10, 15. I can just let you go.
I am a miserable dinner party guest.
I don't believe it.
I punctuate all these stories with, am I talking too much? Should somebody else interrupt me here? What else would you like to know?
I'm going to be your gentle guide on the story the next hour.
I'll walk you through the whole process.
So look, there are 10,000 different conversations to be had with Tom Hanks. I was trying to figure out what to do, where to go. And I figured, look, as a big old nerd, since you are talking a little bit about Pinocchio, your collaboration with Zemeckis.
Oh, I can tell you stuff about Pinocchio. That's fascinating.
What I want to talk about is about your filmmaker collaborations because you've worked with the best of them. And let's start with Mr. Zemeckis.
Okay.
It's been a minute since you guys have collaborated. It actually shocked me how long it's been. Talk to me about, because here's what I think of when I think of Robert Zemeckis. I certainly think of the technical know-how, and he gets a lot of justifiable praise for that. But then when I really dig into his films, I do honestly think about emotion, and I think about how he can wreck me in Castaway, at the end of Back to the Future, at Forrest Gump. What is the secret sauce over the years that you've noticed that Bob Zemeckis delivers? What's a quintessential?
Well, he's a man possessed with a desire to do something that nobody else has done. Sometimes that's technical, but oftentimes it's thematic. what are we really examining here? And it is constantly challenging. Let me tell you a story about Bob. Bob he grew up in the south side of Chicago, in the most average of lower middle class row houses there is. Actually, at a time where you could actually go hunting out the backyard in South Chicago. So that's a long time ago. The South Side, and he was doing things like he had a job, evidently, I think, making instructional films for the Evinrude Outboard Motor Company, the little outboard motors, for boats. And he went in there and he took some of the equipment, some of the cameras and moviolas and whatnot, and he ended up making like videos to Beatles songs with films. And so he was always playing around with making movies, and he was sitting in his basement rec room one day, watching the Johnny Carson show in the 60s and the guest was Jerry Lewis, believe it or not. And Johnny asked, "Hey, Jerry, what are you up to now?" And he says, "Well, I'm teaching what he said, he's teaching a seminar on filmmaking at the USC Film School." And Bob said, "I was in there alone and I heard Jerry Lewis say he was teaching a seminar at the USC Film School. And I stood up and I yelled at the top of my lungs, 'There's such a thing as a film school.'" And from then he was possessed. And the story of how he got into USC is actually quite legendary. And how he stayed at USC was really quite legendary because, long story, I'll leave Bob to tell you that. And this translates to a moment, the first time we worked together, which was on Forrest Gump, and we were shooting the scenes. We actually shooting a specific scene where Forrest was playing ping pong, and a guy comes in to say in the hospital, in the wounded hospital in Saigon. And some guy comes in a uniform and says, "Private Gump." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You have just been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor." And I said something like, "Oh." And Bob, it was the last shot of the night. And we were Bob was like, "Look, how do we do this? How do we do this?" And I said, "Well, Bob, how about if I'm here playing ping pong?" And the guy comes in and asks me the question, and I stop playing ping pong. And that's how we do the scene. And he looked at me like I was insane. He was angry at me. His fist balled up and the veins on it, so the tendon in his neck, clenched. And he said, "Well, hell, anybody can do that." And from that, if you go back and look at the movie now, we added a special effect in which there's a little tape square. The ping pong table is flipped up, and Forrest is just hitting rockets back and forth. Dig it. And we had to come up with a way in order for me to set the ping pong paddle down with the ball on it, under it, and stand at attention. And the ball was optical. It was a CGI ball. But so I had to palm a ping pong ball in my unused fist, and when it came around, do it. And that's the way Bob approaches not just a technical version of a shot, but literally every moment of the dialogue. Right. Working with Bob, you sit with everybody in the movie for about 2 weeks and you discuss the movie. And it doesn't matter if you're in the scene or not, if you have an opinion of what works and what doesn't, because Bob just says, "Well, what do you think about that? What do you think about what we're doing there?" And everybody gets to put input something, and you end up getting something from the other people that are in the film. Is that me? Sorry, I got to turn off my my ongoing government notifications. Oh, look at that! Oh man!
Anything we should know?
Seems to wait. I'm gonna have to take this because it seems a prince in Nairobi needs some help. Here, I turn that off. And that's the way Bob works. And we have done that over and over again. I guess what? This is our, let me think. What movie?
Let's see. I've got it here. This is your fourth go round.
Okay. This is our fourth go round. And every time we've done it, and I'll be starting a fifth that we don't have to talk about now after the first of the year. And they have all been these deep throes of not just, how do we make this movie, but also what is the story we're telling? What is the theme we're examining, and why are we bothering with all of this? Now, you would think then what's the point of doing as commercial enterprise, tentpole classic as Pinocchio, And I said, Bob said, you really want to do? I said, Bob, I want to be a part of what you are going to do with When You Wish Upon a Star. This is
when you marry one iconic thing with another iconic thing.
Let's go to it. And and I have spent let's see, Bob and I first worked together. What the hell year was that? 1993.
94 was
94 when it came out.
So 93.
So we made it. Yep. We shot it in 93, and he and I have got together about every 6 weeks or so. And says, "What you got? What are you doing? What are you coming up with?" And
that's a lot of 6-week intervals in the last like 15 years between.
Well, I'm okay. Have I usurped reality here with 6 weeks? Sometimes it's 6 months.
You do the check-in. Yeah.
We roll back into each other and we sit and we have lunch and we talk about everything under the sun, life, kids, everything. But we always come around and the more hilarious aspects of the biz, where it is, because I could tell you about how me and Bob sat down with a bunch of mucky mucks at I think it was before Sony, whoever we made some movie for, I can't remember. And we were trying to convince them to release the DVD of the movie day and date with it open. Anyway, so we're always playing around with that, but we also come around to what is going on or what has gone on that deserves the attention and the work and the effort of having a movie made about it.
Right.
And when this one came around, I just said, Bob, what are you doing? And he said, looks like I'm going to do Pinocchio. And I just said, you got a Geppetto? And he said, you'd want to do Geppetto? And I said, Bob, however long it would take for me to do Geppetto with you would be like being able to being traded to the 1927 New York Yankees and helping them make a pennant run, and bat me right after Lou Gehrig or something like that, because the full frontal effort that he puts into the tiniest moment, even on between a digital cat and a digital puppet and whatever I'm bringing to it, ends up being just this magnificent workout. And in the guise of revisiting one of the other thing I know about it is Pinocchio was a wickedly important motion picture in the whole Disney oeuvre because it was the first feature film that used the multiplane cell camera. So suddenly deep pans, deep focus became possible on a Walt Disney feature film. Prior to that, the only movie that had done it had been a short called The Old Mill, which is a cartoon with no dialogue, just sound and music. And so I wanted to be a big ass part of that. And knowing that Geppetto appears throughout. If this was the story of Jean Valjean and Pinocchio is Jean Valjean, I get to play Javert. I get to constantly be after him throughout. So there was just going to be some combination of a revisit to something that, was going to have to be updated to some degree because there's just a bunch of stuff in Pinocchio you can't do no more. You can't do societally, as well as whatever Bob was going to do. With Monstro and Jiminy Cricket, who is Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and everybody else that's in the cast. So yeah, when the great thing about working with people more than once is you get right to it. There's no small talk. There's no getting to know you. Everybody knows how each other's works, and so it's a very low maintenance kind of thing. And all you really do is mix it up as opposed to, well, why are we doing it that way?
Right.
Which is a question.
Right to it. Yep.
And Bob asks that question of me, so what do you want to do here? And I said, well, I was thinking of doing that. Well, why do it that way? Why don't you just do it? I said, oh, so great. You mean you? And then we go back and forth on that. Well, why are you doing it that way? And with no ego involved, and by the way, I pulled a number of boners a couple of times. I can tell the time Bob, knocked on my trailer door and first thing in the morning, he came in. Hey, can I have a word with you? I said, okay, what didn't work? Well, everything you did yesterday did not work. So we're going to have to go.
Everything you did yesterday, let's not do again today.
Very good, sir. All right, sir. Let me see what else I can come up with. And how about this and this? So it ends up being I have a number of filmmakers. I mean, like I'm sad I really only got to do three things with Nora: two
Sure.
films and
the play, of course.
the play,
Yeah.
and the luxury of being able to go back and work with somebody else, because you reach the level of what you did, and then you have to surpass that. It's like the next year of university. You're no longer doing that subject 101. You're now in
graduate studies. Yeah.
Every movie afterwards becomes graduate studies.
You mentioned Nora Ephron. That was exactly where I want to go next. As a born and bred New Yorker and Upper West Sider, her films are so important to me. This is my first controversial question of the podcast. What's a better film, Sleepless in Seattle or You've Got Mail? Can you choose which of your children you love more?
Oh, man. I'm going to call them twins, and one is not the evil version of the other. One doesn't have a goatee and wear sunglasses. They're both. The thing about both of if you go back and look at Sleepless in Seattle, you know that there's a reference to Jerry Seinfeld's Soup Nazi in it?
I don't remember that.
There is. There's a conversation between Rosie O'Donnell and Meg, in which she said, there's a guy in New York who sells nothing but soup.
Right.
That was the Soup Nazi. And Nora always Nora has her finger on the pulse of what she always says. And I never turned down a front row seat for Human Folly, which is why she was one of the early contributors to the Huffington Post. So she pays attention to everything, and the conceit behind both films have an awful lot to do with mass media. This personal contact that comes by way of mass media that we now all feel, because there is that ongoing difference between having 50,000 followers on your Instagram account, which can make some people feel fantastic, and other people have 15 million versions of them, followers as well. When we did Sleepless in Seattle, we read it. I read it instantly, and I said, "Oh, well, let's do this. I think it's great." And Nora said, "Yes, I think it's great too. We have to hurry up and get the movie done before there's something surpasses email."
Oh, for you.
And again, and You've Got Mail. Sorry, You've Got Mail. And she was actually right. I mean, the idea of having to log on to AOL now is this quaint, kind of like
funny, though. That specificity doesn't bother me. It's somehow you would think that would not lend itself to having a longevity, a long life, but somehow it works.
Well, it comes down to it's all an examination of human behavior, and that need to connect, and the what do you call it, the realities that people project upon people they just heard once on the radio, or got an email from.
Right.
And so the answer between your question is get out. I'm not going to answer that stupid question, Josh Horowitz. Go out and wander around Midtown Manhattan, and go get a cup of soup.
I have to give the edge to any film with a rooftop killer subplot that is never realized. I've always wondered, was Steve Zahn the rooftop killer? I have my own theories.
Good question.
My next question is about big swings in terms of performances, because as much as people talk about you as kind of the everyman, and certainly you've done that in many a film and kind of been our avatar at times, I often think about the big swings, and you only have to look most recently at Elvis, for instance, which is a big swing. When have you felt most out on the limb? When you felt like this could really, I'm on the knife's edge. This could
you're okay. This is an interesting question, because everybody just assumes that a bunch of movies just show up and learn the lines and hit the marks, And I'm going to tell you, every one of these movies drives me to distraction and fills me with self-loathing at 3:00 in the morning. You get up in the movie, say, "How in the world can I be authentic in this moment?" Because all those movies that you're cheerful and charming and witty and your hair looks great. You know what happens while you're doing that? Your life is falling apart. You got a lawsuit going on. You found out, you have type 2 diabetes. You have to literally go in and be completely contrary to the way real life actually is. Your kids are miserable. They all hate you. Somebody got lost, your dog, there's so many things that are going wrong, and what you have to do is still go in and somehow do what Shakespeare said and hold the mirror up to human nature. The bigger swings are delicious meals, to tell you the truth. Because you go down this path that is so complex. And every time you add something onto it, you actually are taking something outside of yourself and putting it onto yourself, as opposed to the other films where you have to dig down deep inside and be true to yourself. Now, which one is the easier gig?
Right. Scarier.
You know,
to dig
it's kind of like talking to a stand-up comedian who has 40 minutes of brilliant material. And you say, my God, yeah, that was hilarious. You looked like you were having fun up there. Fun. I took 9 years to come up with this thing. I am tortured out there.
I went through 3 divorces. I lost whatever. Yeah, exactly. For your benefit.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you enjoyed my 40-minute set. It ends up being making movies is holding reality at bay for as long as you can. And sometimes the most you can do is hold reality at bay for the 2.5 minutes that a scene takes.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is just like one just damn thing after another. But you take, like, okay, you're going to look at Elvis. There's only one way to do Colonel Tom Parker, and that is to start with Colonel Tom Parker.
Right.
I had never seen Colonel Tom Parker. I'd never heard his voice. When Baz Luhrmann came to me and he said, Elvis, I said, okay, first of all, why are you here? Elvis in my office? This doesn't make sense. And he says, well, you know, there would never, there certainly would have never been a Elvis without a Colonel Tom Parker, but there never would have been a Colonel Tom Parker without Elvis. And so, boom, there is something right there that is fascinating. But then I saw what he looked like, and I heard what he sounded like. And again, I said, Baz, are you in the right place? And he says, no, this is the layering that I want you to take a stab at. And so you just begin. And none of this is easy. All of it is some degree of torturous fun. But all you can do is put the backpack on and step out onto the trail, and you see the mountains in the distance, and hopefully you have enough water and protein bars and blankets so you can make it through the nights and get on with it. The thing that you must also understand, Josh, you and your listeners, is that all of these are part of a grand alliance with an awful lot of collaborators. Nobody takes a big swing all by themselves. Right. There is, I can tell you about Sean and Jason and Brittany, who I spent 45 hours a week with, you know, as they were layering on all of who the Colonel was. And so literally I could close my eyes and open them every 45 minutes and see a little bit more of the Colonel that day. Yeah. And then there's also the people that you interact with. There's not a lot of difference between having to hit the marks and tell the truth under as much of the visuals that go along with Colonel Tom Parker than there is with being, you know, any of the other guys I played. You're somehow you are creatively naked, no matter how much stuff you have onto, and you have to get down into a thing that everybody will recognize as, that's human behavior, as I understand it.
I love talking also to my favorite artists about the films that form them. And I've heard a lot of interviews with you over the years. And one film has often come back around, a film that you've seen many times on the big screen, and I've seen it at every opportunity too. You never worked with Stanley Kubrick, but you loved 2001, I know, and you love it to this day. Did you ever meet Stanley Kubrick?
No, that was beyond my comprehension at the time. I probably would have passed out, you know, if I'd been, you know, we never left England, but if I was, you know, in some restaurant in England and Stanley Kubrick was walking in when I was walking out, I would have fallen down and blocked the revolving door. They'd have to revive me, you know. That movie, you know, if I was a 13-year-old kid and saw some, you know, architectural masterpiece, name an architectural masterpiece in the world, you know, the
Sistine Chapel.
Okay, the Sistine Chapel or the Taj Mahal, or
right.
You know, the Great Pagoda in Cambodia or something like that, and you end up being transfixed and altered forever because of it. Or if you read, you know, the greatest book on the planet Earth, you know, you read the, you know, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance when you're 12 years old or something, and it just alters your consciousness. That's what 2001: Space Odyssey did for me, because it was not told in standard, not told with a narrative.
Right.
You had to glean what these people were talking about. You know, nothing was explained to you, it was just shown to you. And that's really screwed me up. Because I beat the living daylights out of everybody in the course of some movie, one after another. I was like, why are we talking about it? Why don't we just show it? Why do we have to explain what we're doing? Let's just show it. And you know, that doesn't fly with an awful lot of people, and it doesn't work for an awful lot of stories. I've since gone back and watched Barry Lyndon. I just saw it like 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I had never seen it in its entirety. And to watch it and know of Mr. Kubrick's work as I do now, I think it would, at the time it came out, they just weren't going to give it to him. They were not going to give him credit. And they hated the fact that he cast Ryan O'Neal in it, and it was slow. And does Candlelight really look like that? You know, all this kind of stuff. Oh, he's having so much fun with those new Zeiss lenses. He forgot to make a movie. They're insane. It is a masterpiece, because he shows it and then he tells you what was going on in the course of it. So his talk about a guy who, you know, swings, you know, the big swings and throws deep. You cannot look at a Stanley Kubrick movie and see it as some brand of equal as Fellini or Pasolini or, you know, Godard or any of this. It is a singular approach to cinematic art, in which can you imagine if 2001: A Space Odyssey had gone through research screenings? You know, Stanley Kubrick, they're saying, how are the cards? What are the numbers? What are the high recommends? Every one of his movies would have been thrown out of the theater.
Cut the prologue, talk narration.
Yeah. Can you add a narration? Yeah. Can we understand what's going on? Can Hal narrate this entire thing? It would have been like a change
of heart. Yeah. Can he turn?
And I'm not, good? You know, and I think there's still a grand number of artists, the filmmakers that do the same thing. I would challenge anybody to look at a movie that came out of, I think it came out of Greenland or Iceland last year, called Lamb.
Oh, I saw Lamb. Numi Rapace.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
What did that movie do to you? You know, and that goes part and parcel with everything else that you know comes down the pike. I happen to know from a number of people, Steven Spielberg, for example, and a few other folks that knew Stanley Kubrick, who said, you know, he watched everything. He saw everything. He watched TV in order to see what's going on. He looked at stuff that would be going on commercials. So his faith in an unspoken narrative, a purely cinematic narrative, is off the scale. And to see that when I'm 13 years old, 12 or 13 years old, and then to go right back the next Saturday and see it again, and periodically just put it on in a good, like every now and again, it shows up on a 4K projection nearby. And I saw the big one that they put up on essentially IMAX screens. I saw that in Pittsburgh a couple of years ago when I was doing the Mr. Rogers movie.
They showed it in 70 millimeter here like 5 years ago at the Village East. And I left the theater and the usher said, oh, Spielberg was just in the previous show. Yeah, that's what I love about it. You have to like pay your respects. You have to revisit and
70 is the way to see it because of the grain. The digital projection of it is quite frankly too clear. You can see all the logos, you can see all the seams, you can see everything. The diffusion and the grain of the 70 millimeter really just makes it soft and makes it look, I think, 10 times more fantastically around. I will say the biggest thing that really screwed me up about that movie is it paid attention to physics.
Right.
You know, they were in zero gravity. And so that stewardess that walks upside down and the odd kind of like way they're walking around with their grip shoes. And of course, the major, you know, the wheel, the centrifugal drum of the command module of the Voyager Discovery. I remember reading reviews of the movie in which the critics said, we're talking about magnetic boots on the actors. It's like, really? I remember a teacher in my junior high school said, well, they probably have zero gravity chambers at NASA. And I actually remember thinking, oh, right, they have a room with a big switch on it. This is gravity on, gravity off, and they just switch it down to off and everything floats around. So the idea that a filmmaker would make a movie about, an alien, contact with Earth and people flying to the moon and whatnot, and insist on the reality of zero gravity and and paying attention to the true soundless physics of the void and stuff like that. Screwed me up, man, because I had to then look at like Star Trek, which was great. That's nothing more than, you know, a TV series about being in the Navy. Right. You know, because somehow they were able to walk around on Starship Enterprise and eat food and drink, you know, take elevators, and
miraculously every single planet had the right gravity. It was perfect.
Yeah, and oddly enough, and they all spoke English too. I thought that was pretty great.
I want to run through some famous and maybe not so famous what ifs about your career.
All right.
Okay. Confirm or deny these. And we can run through these pretty quickly if you want. Spielberg, who of course you eventually worked with, he first wanted you to play Peter Pan in Hook. True or false? Do you remember?
No,
that?
that's false. No.
Okay. We of course know that you were going to work for many years on Dino with Scorsese.
Yeah.
Which is one of those films that will always live in my brain, at least. It sounds like he also explored having you play Bill the Butcher in Gangs of New York.
News to me.
Okay, this is good. This is valuable.
I would have jumped on that.
You mentioned Star Trek. Star Trek and Star Wars have come up. Star Trek First Contact, did they ever approach you about playing James Cromwell's role, Zephram Cochrane? Remember that?
Not to my knowledge.
Didn't get through the Hanks team.
The guy who invented warp drive? Oh, come on. I would have jumped on that.
You got the bona fides.
I would have been, you know, talk about nerd town. I mean, I would have come in. I would have brought in gift tribbles to everybody on the first meeting. Guys, here's some tribbles for you. Remember the trouble with tribbles? I would have done that.
You're speaking my language.
I had an old pal. In junior high. That was at the time when on Channel 2 in Oakland, every night at 6 o'clock, they ran a cut up version of Star Trek, the original Captain Kirk, you know, William Shatner, who is a genius, by the way. I've since done some stuff with William Shatner. The man, genius. I can
pushing 90, going into outer space.
A man who has a devouring appetite for art and performing. Anyway, it was on every night at 6, and we would have a competition sometimes to see who could call the other guy first with the title of the episode, you know. And you would base it not sometimes on the star date, but mostly was about you'd need a nanosecond to know what episode it was. And if you didn't know the title, you still took a shot at it.
That's a fun game.
Oh yeah.
Let that be your last battlefield. Balance of Terror.
Oh yeah, Balance of Terror. That's right.
That's a good one.
I Mud.
Oh, there you go. Ron Howard has said that you were almost a stormtrooper in Solo.
I would have done that. Yeah, I couldn't make that work.
Okay.
I couldn't get there in time. You know, I think now if you like do a survey, all kinds of famous people have been in a stormtrooper outfit. I think Danny Craig was in one. Yep. You know, I know movie executives have shown up to be a stormtrooper. You know, I'd do it. That was one thing about Star Wars. You know, within the first 45 seconds of it, as soon as you saw a stormtrooper, never mind Darth Vader, but as soon as you saw those guys run around, those stormtrooper outfits, you were in the hands of something that had been really well thought out, despite the fact of the lack of gravity on all those ships.
There's a great new doc on Disney Plus actually about the birth of ILM and just that whole directed by the great Lawrence Kasdan.
I remember we did some ILM shots for Joe versus the Volcano, and we had to go up to Marin County for it. I said, "Oh my God, we're going to ILM. This is going to be fantastic." It was just a storage
guys
space.
at computers, basically.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even that. It was just, you know, a garage door, you know, in one of those industrial parks somewhere. It was like, this is ILM. Oh man, I was expecting, you know, gates and guards, you know, like old Paramount Studios or something.
Nobody moving the Ark of the Covenant back and forth.
Nothing like that at all. Just a bunch of guys in black T-shirts.
Speaking of sci-fi, Doctor Who. It's said that Peter Capaldi tried to enlist you through the advances of the producers to actually play Doctor Who at one point.
That would have been a blast. That's all scheduling, I guess. You know, can't do every job. And honestly, me as Doctor Who, can you imagine the outrage? I'm an American, and I'm going to go over and I'm going to jump in that, you know, red telephone box and, you know, and either wear a scarf and whatever it is. I don't think Anthony Quinn could play Zorba the Greek in today's popular judgment, but why? And do you know why, Josh? Because he's not Greek. So imagine the cry if I had played world famous. I would have played one of the Daleks, maybe. I would have been inside those big salt and pepper shakers talking in that automated voice with an English accent, by the way.
Of course.
I could not get into, in San Francisco, in the Bay Area where I grew up, Oakland, they threw on some old Doctor Who's, the guy with the big red, that guy.
Yeah.
And because it was on video out of the BBC, the video signal on American TVs looked odd. Because they have 100 extra lines of scansion on their TVs over there. So our the way it's scanned for us, it just didn't look like video.
Yeah.
It looked like this some other thing. And I just couldn't get past, all these robots with robotic English accents. That's right, Doctor Who. It's like, I don't know what's going on in here. So I've never been a Doctor Who aficionado. I've just been aware of Doctor Who's grand history.
Do you remember your last audition? And did you know it at the time?
That's a good question. Wow. It
must have been late 80s, early 90s.
I auditioned for Splash. That was, and I think that the only reason they had auditions for Splash is because everybody who was big at the time turned it down. If you will go back and who were the top 10, box office actors of the time, they all said no.
Right.
They all said, no way am I going to make a mermaid movie, for the company that released Gus the field goal kicking mule for Walt Disney Pictures, directed by Opie Cunningham. It just was not going to happen. So I remember, I think you can see the audition, the video auditions, because Ron was playing, remember they had those huge, home video cameras.
Sure.
And JVC had one with a miniature VHS cassette that you put into an adapter, and then you could play it on your home That's what he was doing. Each one lasted about 20 minutes. And I think that might have been the last thing I auditioned for, because then this terrible thing happened. They kept asking me to be in movies, and I said yes to every single one of them, because they asked me to be in a movie. You go from a period where all you're just waiting for the phone to ring, and so someone can say, "Hey, would you like to come in and maybe get a chance?" You go from that to the phone rings and said, "Would you like to be in a movie?" And you just, would I?
Well,
yes.
you bring up the fascinating shift that a conversation I've had with many folks in your privileged position of the opportunity to say no, which for 99% of actors doesn't come, and it must be such a strange shift. Where, as you say, you're just working, you're just going.
I think it is the Rubicon, blessed Rubicon, that I've had the opportunity to have to cross. I don't know. I think the first time I came to loggerheads with some member of my crack representation team was the season in between the two of Bosom Buddies. In which, because I worked for ABC, the inevitable opportunity came down to do Fantasy Island. And I said, I could use the money because I didn't get paid much for Bosom Buddies. And, 25% of it was gone in commissions and another 50 was gone in taxes. So I was in a rented house, and, Colin was, it was in my child rearing years, and the idea of doing a week on Fantasy Island just demoralized me so much that I just said, I think I'm going to say no to Fantasy Island. And I had a representation that says, "Well, you think you're making a big mistake?" And I just said, no good is going to come.
What's the upside? What's the best possible?
And I literally said, I don't know what I'm going to get from doing Fantasy Island. He said, well, how about if you're just the best thing that's ever been on Fantasy Island?
Maybe the Love Boat. Maybe that.
Well, I had done the Love Boat. Okay. I did the Love Boat, in between the pilot and the first episode of Bosom Buddies, which was hilarious. And look, if you just want to fall on the floor laughing uproariously. Just take a look at My Love Boat. I shot it in, I think, June of 1980 or something like that. And it's just, I had no idea how movies were made.
Right.
My teeth were the color of moss. My skin was bad because
they hadn't given you the full once over yet. They hadn't washed you down.
It was terrible, but a wondrous adventure. Even the movies that you talk about, even the movies that don't work, or even the movies that you just think like, did I even know what I was doing? You learn something very prescient and important on every single one of them. Because here's the weird thing that happens: you have no idea if it's going to work or not.
Right. You
can be certain that it's a disaster and it works fine. You can be certain that it's the greatest thing that's ever been put on film, and it's horrible. You don't have any idea. And that comes down to this great serendipitous power of the collaborative process. And you learn how to get back around to your question. You learn how to say no against every instinctive grain in your body. When you can finally get to the place and look at it and see what the absolute source material is. If it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. And if you read something and you deep down inside yourself think, I don't know what this theme is, but I do know it's not worth exploring. Not that, and look, at some point I might have even said the most important thing any artist has to learn. This is when you can be really highfalutin. The great thing about podcasts is you can say highfalutin things, and it's just a podcast. It's like no one's going to hold it up to as like a credo. Tom Hanks said on the Josh Horowitz podcast. But the reason to do a movie are multitudinal. The money, the people that you get to work with, the place you might get to go. If you're single, you might get laid. There's all sorts of reasons in order to go off and do movies. And also because they're all a blast. You never don't have a good time making a movie.
Each one's an adventure. Yeah.
Each one is a huge adventure. And the other collaborative artists that you meet become indelibly imprinted upon you for the rest of time. But if you can't go into it 8,000% enthusiastic about getting to dig down into the granular aspect, if I'm using that word right, of the story that you're telling and the theme that you're examining, you have to say no. And it's really hard to do. But when you do, I think you've crossed some sort of Rubicon. And I don't want to discount for a moment that being financially secure makes that more possible. I have the greatest respect in the world for anybody who doesn't take the money, even though if they really, really need it. And I can't say that I've done that. I think I've always, particularly in that early run of movies when they're asked, it was never about the money, it was just the opportunity to make some.
Yeah.
And I don't discount that.
I'm curious,
particularly if you got, car payments and a kid
or two. It's real life. Yeah. How aware are you when you think of mannerisms that have popped up on screen? We're all a collection of tics, mannerisms. And when you've got the like exasperated laugh that I think of when I think of Tom Hanks. I think of you, I'm not going to do an imitation certainly, but you kind of the hey kind of a thing. Like, are you conscious of that at a certain point? Like, I can't go to that well again, or is it?
I think you are. I mean, there's some stuff that comes out completely instinctive and it kind of works. But no, as you get older, you just like, well, you can't keep drawing from that well, and you do end up being. I find myself being attracted to the types of guys that don't do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, that require a whole different sort of, physical DNA, because I do, we all have the same countenance. I think that's what the question is.
Right.
Every actor has a countenance that they bring with them into the project. And it's not a mystery because everybody's seen the billing, they know you're in the movie, and then what the great, and this is why they're all torturous challenges at some point, because you just don't want to go off and do the same thing unless you're playing the same part, of course.
Right.
And unless you're, how many Woodies did I do? I lost, is it 5? I think with smaller 4 movies, but there were a couple of shorts that we did as well. And that's fun to go back into. But I realize that there is a type, I have never heard an imitation of me per se being done, but I'm sure there's someone out there that does it. That would both make me laugh very hard and fill me with dread at the same time. Am I that readable? Really? I'm that obvious? Do I have that geeky a voice? Yes, turns out I do.
We all do. You mentioned the Toy Story films, and like, you know,
Disney.
somewhere a fairy got its wings just now.
Yeah, Tinkerbell. Hey, we just brought Tinkerbell back to life. There she is, sliding from the Matterhorn to somewhere in Tomorrowland.
But it is funny because, like, yes, obviously you've been a part of some franchises in the Robert Langdon series as well. But for outside of those, and those are notable exceptions, like there was never, and I count this as a good thing, the Splash sequel, the Forrest Gump sequel, et cetera. And I'm sure they've gone to you, especially in this era of like reboots, retreads, everything.
Yeah.
Is that just like not even, is there no character at this point that feels like worth going back to from the early?
No, I can't. I mean, I think other people can go off and reinterpret it if they want. You know, right now there's an Indian movie out that is essentially Forrest Gump. I can't wait to see it. I just saw like a photograph of it somewhere, and I said, well, I'm going to have to check that out. There is I will say this, a smart thing I did was I never signed a contract that had a contractual obligation to a sequel.
Right.
Because I always said, guys, look, you know, if there's a reason to do it, let's do it. But you know, I'm not going to. You guys can't force
the cart before the horse. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And there is that natural inclination, I sense, that is a purely, you know, one of pure commerce that says, hey, you just had a hit, so do it again, and you'll have a hit. And well, I will say that with a long time in between, we did take a stab at talking about another Forrest Gump,
right?
That lasted all of 40 minutes. And then we never says, guys, come on. League of Their Own. We thought that there was a possible thing to bring Jimmy Dugan back after Jackie Robinson had broken the color barrier. And we had there was actually a pretty nice screenplay. But all these other kind of like market forces come into it, because one of the things that often happens is the original people who made it happen don't have anything to do with the sequels. And so they're really made by studio executives, you know, and some talented people, you know, like that come in and take their shot. But they have to be the great thing about the Langdon movies were great because they were individual mysteries that came up. And I viewed those as Sherlock Holmes movies.
Right.
You know, Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes is great. Me as Robert Langdon running around, you know, Istanbul or something like that. That's a blast, man.
Yeah.
And after that, it just comes down to, well, you know, how delicate are we going to make this house of cards? You know, that is fun. Particularly, so much of it goes on the day because you realize you got to get from here to there, and how are you going to do that? And anyway. And then also the Toy Story movies. I'll tell you this is a great thing. And this is both commerce and art wrapped up, and actually quite perfectly suited for the entire history of Walt Disney. I mean, as of the man, a guy who understood commerce and art, he had to contractually do 2 more Three Little Pigs cartoons that he hated doing. The first one he loved, and all the second ones were just knockoffs. And he even said at some point, no, in contractual, he wrote on some piece of paper, no more pigs. Meaning that he was a type of artist who said, look, we did that. Let's not just repeat ourselves. Let's take it to some brand of next level. So if you see the second and third Three Little Pigs cartoon, Disney hated them.
Right.
Even though they're loaded with blah, blah, blah art, you know, all the art, you know, the filmmaking still pretty great, but he didn't care about the story because the story had been told. When we, the first Toy Story movie was such a mind-blowing revelation on, you know, on all levels. I was first walked through the storyboards of Toy Story in an anonymous industrial park in Glendale, in which John Lasseter walked me through the entire thing from beginning to end. And all it was hand drawn. And then they showed me against an anonymous blue background, the CGI version of Woody over and over again, having taken a line from Turner and Hooch, in which I was yelling at Hooch, don't eat the car, stop eating the car. And it was a lightning bolt. It was beyond kind of like comprehension. And that was in the days when Michael Eisner and Katzenberg took the Disney studios from its sleepy little, Greyhound bus Greyhound bus station kind of like architecture, and turned it into an Air Force base in the Philippines. It was just like
it may be a metaphor or it may be literal.
Well, anyway, they turned it into the massive thing that it is now, and it's been keep growing. But those are the guys who just really came down and brought a very hard edge version of the industry to it. And God bless them, out of it came the first Toy Story movie. But we did an entire version of that movie that was then thrown out. You might know that story. Yeah. Because it was flipped, and it wasn't really about anything. It was just about a bunch of guys insulting each other and trying to say wacky, funny things. And John Lasseter and the team at Pixar went back, and we ended up doing the whole thing all over again. So then it comes out, and it is what it is. And that was still old school business practices, which said if you had a hit, do another one and knock it out really fast. And now there was this new way of doing it where you don't even have to strike prints. You can just do it for DVDs. You can just do it for home video. And so we started doing the second one for home video. And Tim and I both looked at each other. And Tim was a big guy at Disney then, because he had Home Improvement and all that kind of stuff, and he did all those Disney movies. And I'm saying, what's going on here, man? This is a rocket, and they're just going to release this on home video. And they had all these numbers that said it'll cost half as much, but it'll make just, so they had all these number reasons for we do it. And at one point we were in Studio C, and there was Doc O'Connor. Just Doc. Right. I can't remember Doc, the guy who was the legendary sound mixer back behind the man in the glass booth back there. And we just said, Doc, roll the DAT, the DAT, digital audio tape. Roll the DAT. And we say, hey, this is Tom and Tim here, guys. We were in there just briefly. You never actually record with anybody. We said, can we just say that you guys are nuts to put this out on home video right now? You're nuts. This is going to make $1 billion, guys, if you put it in the movie theaters. You're insane. Now, I don't know if they actually took that and did anything with it, but that's what they did. And they sort of rewrote that aspect of a thing. And what was perfect about it was you cannot go back. Evidently, you cannot go back and examine the relationship that a kid has with their toys enough,
clearly,
because it continued along. And what's extraordinary about this is that we did that for the first time in 1995
was when I think the first one came out.
Okay, so that means we started working on it in 91. All right, if not 90, because they take a long time to render those things. So it's now 2020. So over the course of about 30 years, we examined, all that stuff is, and every time, I got to say, it worked as a theme. And this is not the case with all sequels or in the long series. I love to do this thing, particularly, it happens a lot in Europe, where you think you're going to sit down and have a conversation about, your career, and you're essentially talking to a member of the entertainment industrial complex, somebody who writes about entertainment or movies or something like that. And they always say, you just always are playing the nice guys. You're always playing the same guy over and over again. And I said, well, if you think that, that's fine. And they said, well, why do you do that? And I said, well, I don't think I do. I'm trying to
reject the premise of your question.
I'm not going to reject the premise of the question. But then I always say, but look, you and I both know that I could be sitting here right now promoting Forrest Gump 6 and telling you that if you like Forrest Gump 4 and Forrest Gump 5, you're really going to love Forrest Gump 6. I mean, you can do that. And, I've just been very fortunate. And every now and again, I've had some forceful boundaries that I've been able to keep up in place. And I think I've been. That doesn't always work, alas. You don't always, or you're not always rewarded for examining the theme of the movie by making a movie about it. But ain't that baseball?
Yeah, I was going to say,
all you can do is
you're Honus Wagner. Your batting average is pretty good, man.
Whoa! Have you read the Baseball 100?
No,
Honus. Oh, you got to read the Baseball 100.
Was he our last 400 hitter? Was he our last?
No. Well, I think it was somewhere down there, but he was just like one of the truly great baseball players back when only white people played, Major League Baseball. But evidently he was just a dick on top of that. I may have the wrong baseball legend, so forgive me, baseball.
Well, I saw the Ty Cobb movie. I think there were a lot of dicks back
Well,
then.
he was a notorious dick.
Well, okay, Mr. Disney himself, Tom Hanks. Why are you not in a Marvel movie? They've asked you by now.
I don't know. Not to my knowledge.
Okay,
have they?
okay.
I do not know. I do not know. Boy, talk about coin of the realm. It's like, holy cow.
I mean, you don't need it. You don't need them. They're fine. Everyone's fine. But I'm just saying, it would be a nice marriage. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, all right. Let's unpack this a little bit, Josh, shall we? Let's unpack this.
Okay.
Is there an era of film in which a very particular type of movie dominated the marketplace?
I mean,
you could say Westerns in the 50s,
right?
All right.
The biblical epic in the 60s. I don't even know. Yeah. What else? Nothing.
In order to get into kind of like a universe or something, let's take John Ford's Westerns.
Right.
You can maybe say that is the John Ford universe of Westerns is not that different, perhaps, than the Marvel universe of motion pictures.
Yep.
If it's a bodacious John Ford Western, would you do it? Let me get this straight. Jack, I think it went by Jack Ford. What, you're going to take me back and we're going to be in Monument Valley and we're going to be on a horse and we're going to do the things and we're going to do that. And the Monument Valley will be there. And that's what we're going to do. You might do that because you might end up in like gunfight. Yeah, the Searchers, or you could end up in She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. There's all sorts of things you could end up in. I think but then you can look at the same era of Western in the 1950s, and just a ton of them were, not great, Right. You don't want to rag on any movie because movies are just too hard to make. I think the most thing you can say is, it was quite good, didn't quite work. That's about the worst thing you could say. There's an awful lot. So, and I'm trying to think if there was any other type of movie that came out that truly dominated a market. You could say this, like the Universal monster movies of the 1930s.
Yep.
You could.
And there was interaction between them, similar to the Marvel stuff. So you could,
right.
Yeah. Yep.
I not too long ago saw I'm going to say it was Son of Frankenstein with Basil Rathbone and Boris Karloff as the monster.
Sure.
And it was the fourth in the run, but there was some brand new stuff that was brought to that, Yeah. Gotta say there was. Then you get into the Creature with the Black,
diminishing returns at a certain point, but
right.
Yeah.
I think the bigger question here might just be is, how many screens are there going to be remaining? Because I think there's an awful lot of films that don't need to be, shown on motion picture screens. And I think the ticket sales, the idea of going to the movies is definitely coming back, because there is nobody who doesn't want to have that experience. There is something I just saw. As a matter of fact, we just saw Bullet Train in a movie theater, and I couldn't say the last time we bought ticket. Let's drive to the movie theater. Let's park by the movie theater. Let's walk up and buy a ticket into the movie theater.
Yep.
Let's find a seat, and we were both, even before the movie began, we said, "Isn't this great? Isn't this great? Oh my God, we're back in a movie theater. Isn't this fabulous?" And then you watch the movie and it's fantastic. And you have a shared experience with, 40 or 50, other strangers who are there at the same time. So, what is about, what's up there? What are they examining on the screen? And is it worthwhile? And, we've all seen plenty of what is it? Is it called is it officially the Marvel Universe of Motion
It's
Pictures?
the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Whoa, the MCU. All right. And it's got Spider-Man and the X-Mans and
You got it.
all the
You got it.
mans and all the
mans,
women's
the ladies and the
yeah.
women's. Yeah. The boys
And-
sometimes. Yep.
And I look, I haven't seen them all. I'll give you that right now. But the ones I've seen, I've never come around away from it and start without thinking. There's a couple of great performances in there, man. Those people really gave their all. And
They're
I don't know
the
how
best actors. I know.
I don't know how they do that. I do not know. Then after that, it's like, did they examine the theme that I wanted him to be seen? And I think I can tell all of them are quite good, Josh. They're all quite good.
You've been very generous with your time. I'm going to let you go on this. I have one challenge for you, Tom, because I've noticed over the years, you are quite a mimic of your own of the filmmakers you've worked with.
Okay.
Because
I spend way too much time with them.
All right. So let's see. I'm going to name a collaborator, a filmmaker. Right. You give me a quick impression. We're going to keep it moving. Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Tom Hanks, filmmaker imitation challenge, Ron Howard.
Okay. All right. Remember, you're hurtling home. You're hurtling home. Remember, it's cold.
Penny Marshall.
My mom, where are you going? How come you can't be in the scene? Why did you walk out there? You have to be in the scene. I need your face to cut to. I don't know what I'm going to need later on. You got to stay in the scene.
Robert Zemeckis.
I did one earlier. What about that? I mean, why? Bob, why do you have a guy in a motorcycle with a sidecar? I think sidecars are funny. Why not? I mean, why not have him in a sidecar? I think it's funny. A guy pulls up in a sidecar.
Do you have a Spielberg? I don't know if I've heard Spielberg. Have I heard?
Oh, let me. This okay. Here's how I'm going to do this. You know what I'm going to do this? I'm going to have a camera. I'm just going to have a pogo lens on. Just going to have Janusz, make sure put a 75 on a pogo lens. I'm going to have a pogo lens. I'm going to follow you around. I'm going to follow you around. Let me tell you about a story about Worthy with Steel. When we were doing the Post, there's a ton of guys in it, right? And I said, Stephen, I've made movies with Stephen before, so I try to get together with everybody on the movie, bring them in, we'll have pizza and stuff like that. And I explained to them all how Stephen makes movies. And I said, guys and gals, we're all in there. We had everybody in there. Everybody was in the Post. We were all there. And I said, okay, listen, here's how it works. Let's make sure we all know the dialogue. We'll run some today, and let's make sure before the day comes, we all run the dialogue so we know it backwards and forwards. Because here's what's going to happen. Either Stephen is going to come to us and say, I need you guys help. I don't know how I'm going to shoot. I don't know how I'm going to shoot this scene. I don't know how to shoot this scene. I don't know how to shoot this scene. And that happens. That happened on the bridge of Spies in Germany at 3:00 in the morning. I need some help. I don't know how I'm going to shoot this. What do you guys think you would do? Where would you say? I said, well, Stephen, how about like this? And we try it. Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay.
And then he goes into the other mode.
Then he runs off and Janusz, put a 75 on the pogo cam. He says something like that. Then I said, and the other thing that will happen is we will be prepared. We'll know our stuff absolutely perfectly. And Stephen will have done all of our work for us. And we won't even know what's happening because the camera will be nowhere near us. And he won't care if we say the words the way they're written. He's just going to want us to be in a space and interacting because the camera is literally delivering all the dialogue and all the narrative that we know. And that's why Stephen is Stephen. The man cannot help but think in cinematic terms. Very excited about cinema. Oh, that's great. Because this is another thing. He does this all the time. Hey, Stephen, what if I have this down working in the foreground just with, oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great. It's not in the movie. It'll never be in the movie.
Do you think he thought it would be in the movie? He just
understands. That's great. Yeah. Do it. It's not going to be. That's what he does not tell you that.
Right. That's a brilliant filmmaker.
Which is fine. Yeah.
Anyone we left off before we go? Nora, Clint, anything in your repertoire?
Well, Nora was just always, well, why in the world wouldn't we just do it exactly like that? The only thing I would remove is your beret. When you make a movie about a French little popo dog in Paris trying to find his way, then you can wear a beret, but not in this one. That's pretty much Nora.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Sir, I can't thank you enough, both for the time today, but honestly, I mean, look, you were talking about that film going experience you've recently experienced. I could rattle off 35 Tom Hanks.
Oh, you're very kind.
That have changed my life in different ways. Pinocchio is the latest collaboration with the great Bob Zemeckis.
I'm trying to come up with, okay, I'll tell you this moment, the making of Pinocchio.
Yep.
You're talking with Bob Zemeckis, and the scene involves Geppetto almost drowning by way of Monstro in the boat. And we had such a complicated rig in order to get this thing. The camera was on some massive thing, and we're shooting in a thing called not blue screen, but we're shooting in a volume, which the whole, this is the new technology and works fine. And we were trying to come up. It says, and Bob was explaining, well, what I need you to do is to float up, rise up, and come to the surface and choke, but then roll around and almost choke again, and then come back around and then spit water out of your mouth. And I'm shackled to some sort of gravity rig that spins me around at the same time. And of course, there is no water involved. So
I was going to say, you're thinking this is how I die on Pinocchio.
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say, hey, thanks, Bob, for once again saying to yourself this, well, hell, anybody can do that. Because I'm not sure anybody can do this. But give me 20 minutes and I'll try to provide you with a beat that you need for the movie. So there it is, Geppetto and Pinocchio by way of Bob Zemeckis.
There we go. And as you said, you're reteaming soon. Eric Roth and Robin, the whole Forrest Gump.
Yeah. We're going to go off and swing wide, throw deep, give it another shot.
Amazing. Thank you again, sir, for the time.
All right, Sarah, you'll give me a memo about the things I have to retract or record and change. And Whitney, you've written down a list of all the people I've insulted somehow and have to make apology phone calls to. So I look forward to both of those over email.
Start with me.
All right, and Josh, I'm going to tell you right now, how often do you use, say, Uber Eats or DoorDash there in your little midtown apartment?
Pretty often.
Too often. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Well, God bless you. Thanks. I enjoyed talking to you.
Same. Thanks, man.
Take it. We'll do it again.